Hello, Tabletop Warriors, and welcome back to the Plague Den. My name's Tony, and if this is the first time you're joining us, welcome. Today we're going to talk about the question, what is Warhammer 40K to you? So this morning I was on Reddit, on the 40K lore subreddit, and someone just posed the question, what is Warhammer 40K? They were at a bookstore, they saw some of the books, and they wanted to know what it was. And I think that's awesome. I think that's people continuing to see the community and be intrigued by the community and wanting to find out more. The thing I thought was even more awesome was all the varied responses to what it is. I mean, this person is basically like, what is this thing you're discussing? What is this thing I'm hearing about? What are you guys all doing together? And a lot of people had a lot of different answers. The number one answer was the lore. You know, in the grim dark future, there is only war, and the Emperor of Man sits on the golden throne for 10,000 years in the never-ending war. And that's great, and that is certainly what Warhammer 40K is. But I think that there's a lot of other answers. I think there's a lot of varied responses. And I think it has a lot to do with what is Warhammer 40K to you? What is it to each of you individually? So you have people that their only joy in the game, or only part of the game that they really like, is to create the miniatures, is buy the models, put them together, paint them, put their heart and soul and passion into creating the most fantastic model they can, and winning awards, the Golden Demon Award, and putting it on Cool Mini or Not, and having people talk about it. And maybe they sell those miniatures or do contracts where people pay them to make them paint their models for them, and that's their passion, and that's really as far as they get. That's their hobby, and it's great because they get to pour their artistic talent into creating these one-of-a-kind miniatures, and a lot of them are modeled and custom made, and that is what Warhammer 40K is to them. And then you have other people who spend their money and their time to win tournaments and go to tournaments, and so they don't have any qualms about spending hundreds of dollars on 6 to 9 Plague Burst crawlers, because that's the new thing, that's the new meta. And they'll play a tournament and they just want to smash everybody's face and chase them off the table and win all the tournaments. And they put the models together and they play with them in gray. They don't even paint them sometimes, because that's not what they're into. They're into winning. They're into being competitive. They're into cutting all the corners and min-maxing all the rules to make their army the most competitive as possible. And they don't have a problem with 3 months later, when the meta changes, and going out and having to buy new models or a whole new army. That's what Warhammer 40K is to them. Just playing the game at the most competitive level. For some people, it's a social aspect. I know 6 or 7 years ago, I had a group of friends that I played with on Saturdays. We went to the local gaming store, basically spent all day playing the game. We'd play 2 or 3 games, but most of the time we spent just talking about the game, talking about the lore, talking about strategies, talking about our different armies, talking about what we're going to buy next, what we're going to paint next, what we're going to build next. And I remember there was a couple of guys in that group that I think I only saw them play like 2 or 3 times. Their joy was to come up and paint a couple of models and to talk and discuss and be part of that community, be part of that all-day social community. And that to them is what Warhammer 40K is. It's not necessarily about playing the game, although playing the game is part of it, but Warhammer 40K to them was the social aspect of spending the day with friends discussing it. And I think that's important. I'm in the military, so I have a pretty high-stress job. So I like to come home at the end of the day or towards the end of the evening and spend a couple hours painting models or putting them together or working on my list and listening to YouTube videos or watching battle reports on YouTube or watching some of the 40K lore videos or reading the books. Because to me, it's a stress reducer. It deals with anxiety. It lets me decompress and kind of have an outlet for that. It's really cool to just kind of drift away for a couple of hours and decompress. And to me, that's what Warhammer 40K is about. I get to spend an hour or 2 diving into this expansive world where it's just me and the models and the lore, and I don't have to think about other stressors in my life. So that's another facet of it. So I'd be interested to know how you guys answer that question. I know it comes up all the time. So just in this past week, I've seen the question a few times on Reddit, or I've seen the question on Facebook. Hey, what is Warhammer 40K? Or how do you play Warhammer 40K? Or how do I get into Warhammer 40K? So if someone asks you that question, how do you answer it? Please talk about, share with me in the comments about, is it as easy as just, well, it's a tabletop miniatures game? I don't think it is. So when I answer that question, I try to say, well, it's a hobby and it involves a tabletop game, but it also involves video games. It also involves novels. Some people just collect the codexes. Some people just collect the models. Some people get into the painting aspect or the social aspect or whatever the case may be. I'd like to know how you guys answer that question. So when someone asks that question, it's a possible new member of our community. And I think that that's important, especially over the last few years. Warhammer's 40K and Age of Sigmar seems to be growing exponentially. And that's great. It gives us more people to collaborate with, discuss with, form groups with, interact with, and discuss strategies and just kind of socialize with whatever it is that you get out of what you do in 40K. So I challenge you to answer that question for yourself. What is Warhammer 40K to me? And then think about how you answer that question when you're out and about and people ask you about this hobby that you're involved in. Please like this video. Comment down below to discuss your thoughts. Subscribe for more videos from the Plague Den. And this is Tony saying, win all your battles in life and on the tabletop.